Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, which is part two in a three-part literacy series. Today's Lunch and Learn is early literacy policy and legislation in schools. If you missed our first session, we talked about the 5 pillars of early literacy. That was the practice session, and we will drop a link to that recording in the chat box, but you can also find it on our YouTube channel. Today's key is on policy. So we're glad that you're here today. My name is Stephanie Babbitts, and I am the project coordinator for START under the New Jersey Statewide Family Engagement Hub. So let's talk a little bit about the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. The New Jersey Family Engagement Hub recognizes that students thrive when families and communities are engaged in the school community, increasing the likelihood of student success. Our goals are to promote and engage in activities and policies that build collaborative partnerships among youth, family, school, and community in order to enhance child development and student achievement. We are committed to serve as a centralized information hub on family engagement, inform educators, practitioners, and families about the latest educational opportunities and barriers by providing technical assistance, resources, and support on effective family engagement policies, practices, and activities that lead to improvements in student development, academic achievement, and long-term success. We provide parents and caregivers with easy to understand, usable information to solve present-day problems, to provide youth with a voice to share their experiences and ideas to support their continued academic success, and to enhance parent and family capacity to effectively work with schools and professionals to meet children's needs. Our agenda for today: we will provide an overview of the state of early literacy in schools here in New Jersey. We will discuss how it's being addressed and what this means for students, and then learn how you can stay informed on the policies impacting students and what you can do to keep the momentum going. But first, let's talk a little bit about just how did we get here. We know that the reading crisis didn't start during COVID, but many parents were seeing firsthand, sitting next to their kids, myself included, how students were being taught to read, including their own, and alarms started going off. We saw our children guessing words that they didn't know by identifying the first letter of the word, looking at the pictures, or thinking of a word that could work in context of the sentence. Teachers were literally covering words and having students guess what might work in the sentence. The approach to sounding out the word by looking at it, seeing the letters, and knowing what their corresponding sounds were, and putting those sounds together to make the word wasn't happening. But the bigger issue was that many educators and scientists have known for long before that teaching someone how to read takes explicit and systematic approach to instruction in the early grades. So in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Yet here in New Jersey, the changes were not being made. So doing a data deep dive here, in its third year of reporting on the pace of academic recovery measures in districts nationwide, the Education Recovery Scorecard, which is a collaboration between the Center for Education Policy Research at Harvard University and the Educational Opportunity Project at Stanford University, issued their annual report on district-level student growth in math and reading earlier this year. Looking at the data, average student achievement in New Jersey remains over 2/3 of a grade level below 2019 levels in math and almost half of a grade level below in reading. In other words, the loss in math achievement in New Jersey is equivalent to 68% of the progress students typically make annually between grades 4 through 8. And again, as you see there, New Jersey ranked 43rd among states in terms of recovery in math and 24th in reading between 2019 and 2024. The chart shows the data, and we're going to drop the link and you can look at your own school district data. A contributing factor to the scores has been chronic absenteeism. A rise in chronic absenteeism So, which means students missing more than 10% of a school year, from 11% of students in 2019 before the pandemic to 16% in 2023, is slowing recovery in many districts in New Jersey. And again, you'll see that on that scorecard. New Jersey received $4.2 billion in federal pandemic relief for K-12 schools, or roughly $3,100 per student, which is less than the national average of $3,700 per student. On the New Jersey Department of Education website, you can also look up your school district to see how the funds were allocated, and we'll provide that link. And also at the end, when you get it, after participating in today's webinar, there will be an email that you'll receive, which will have all of the resources as well. Nationally, the money did contribute to the academic recovery, especially when targeted at academic catch-up efforts, such as summer learning and tutoring, as many school districts were doing, including my own. But now it's 2025. And as we look at that data, and we know that districts were doing everything they could to address the learning loss, we are still behind. As Professor Tom Kane from the Center for Education Policy Research at Harvard said earlier this year, the rescue phase is over. The federal relief dollars are gone. It is time to pivot from short-term recovery to longer-term challenges, such as reducing absenteeism and addressing the slide in literacy. What it has come down to is a call to action. Going back to an earlier slide, we saw that remote learning was a peek behind the curtain on how kids were learning to read. What we saw in some instances were concerning. So now, asking state and local leaders to step up and take additional measures to ensure our children are getting the right reading instruction is crucial. So let's talk about what New Jersey has decided to do. I am pleased to introduce our guest presenter today, Beth Cosentino. Beth is the project director for the New Jersey Tiered System of Supports for Early Reading Project at SPAN, as well as the Youth Engagement Specialist on SPAN's Youth Engagement team. She's been at SPAN for 4 years, beginning her journey on the START project with me as a parent group specialist. Beth has 2 children, one who has an individualized education program or IEP and relies on targeted support and intervention for reading. Beth served on the working group on student literacy for the state and is serving her 6th year as a board member for her school district's special education parent advisory group. And we will provide Beth's contact information. I'm so pleased and honored to have Beth here today. Beth, take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. So today I'm going to talk about policy and legislation related to early literacy in New Jersey, specifically 2 pieces of legislation that were signed into law in August of 2024 by Governor Murphy, Public Law 2024, Chapter 52 and Chapter 53. So as you see here, he is surrounded by students, educators, and advocates when these laws were signed. And you may recall that when this news was shared, as there were a few articles at the time about what was included in the legislation. The policy is, as I mentioned, there were 2 pieces of legislation. So the first one is the Chapter 52, Public Law 2024, which includes specific items that outline expectations for the New Jersey Department of Education and school districts across the state. For the Department of Education, they were to establish a working group on student literacy. They were also to develop and publish guidance on literacy. They're to provide an online resource center and offer professional development programs and grants. These expectations were and are driven by a timeline, and they are currently on target with that timeline. For school districts in New Jersey, their part would be to be responsible for doing universal screenings, having high quality instructional materials, securing professional development for educators, and applying for grants that were available to them and are available. So I'll go into these expectations with greater detail, but first I'm going to talk briefly about the second piece of legislation, Chapter 53. So under Public Law 2024, Chapter 53, the New Jersey Department of Education was required to establish a new office within the Department of Education. The result of this is the Office of Learning Equity and Academic Recovery, also known as LEAR, L-E-A-R. The goals of the LEAR office are to collect and analyze data to inform decision-making, so that's their progress monitoring, to coordinate resources, to research best practices, to provide school districts across the state with support, to develop resources to support teaching and learning, and to oversee the working group on student literacy. This newly established office serves as a central hub for coordinating statewide literacy initiatives and ensuring that all students have access to high-quality learning opportunities. You can go on their website and learn more about them and what they offer. Next, though, I want to talk to you a little bit about the New Jersey Literacy Framework, which is as a result of the working group, the recommendations, and the new LEAR office. The rollout was this framework guidance documents. So first we have the Guide to Evidence-Based Literacy Practices and Universal Screeners, which was published in May of this year, 2025. Next came the Guide to High-Quality Instructional Materials, also known as HQIM, which was published 2 months later in July 2025. And then finally, in September, they published and released the New Jersey Literacy Framework Connections to Preschool. These guides make up a literacy framework that encompasses what school districts and parents need to know about implementing practices, screeners, instructional materials, and how to address early literacy starting as early as preschool. The preschool guide refers to the necessary components of what makes a skilled reader and what ways these components are addressed in a preschool classroom. And really, most of these strategies can be utilized at home, especially having conversations with young children to build their knowledge and vocabulary. The sooner, the better. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the Universal Literacy Screener. This is mandatory starting this school year. So as I mentioned before, the law was signed in August of 2024, and now the Universal Literacy Screener is in effect for this school year, 25-26. A Universal Literacy Screener is a tool used to find out whether students are developing the skills they need to know to be successful readers. We will talk about those skills a little bit in a few minutes, and if you came to part 1, you may be familiar with them already. The school district is responsible to administer literacy screeners twice a year, at least for students, all students in grades kindergarten through 3rd. The Department of Education has provided a timeline for this. So beginning of the year assessment window was September 1st to October 31st. So it's already passed. And then the middle of the year assessment window is December 1st to February 15th. They report screening data to the New Jersey Department of Ed, the school districts, and for the first round, the upload window to the DOE was November 1st to the 15th, so that's already passed. They also need to notify families within 30 days after the close of the screening period. So therefore, sometime between now and December 1st, if it hasn't already happened, a parent should be notified. So based on these results, districts are responsible for providing appropriate supports, which may include additional screenings and targeted interventions designed to meet students' specific needs. A universal screener helps flag students who are struggling, so then a diagnostic or more specific assessment can be done. A screener can also indicate if the core instruction is effective or not. And how does it do this? If you have a strong core instruction, there should be around 80% of students who are on target with being proficient readers. So that means, in other words, if you have more than 20% of students in the class who are being flagged on a screener, something may be going on with the core instructional materials. We'll cover more about the HQIM, or high quality instructional materials, in the next slide. But let's go back to what happens if a child is flagged on the screener, or we also like to call the screener a temperature check. The idea of this method is to be preventative, so early intervention is key. This is why there's so much emphasis on early literacy. So parents will be notified the results, and if their child is flagged, then the school knows to address that skill by doing a diagnostic assessment to verify what the screener is indicating. Once there's more information, the targeted intervention can be put into place. Targeted is one of those words that we hear more and more around early literacy because it's important to be specific to the skill or area of need that must be addressed. The New Jersey Literacy Framework, this manual, and you can see the cover of it on this slide here, it includes a helpful tool called the University Literacy Screening Quality Evaluation Worksheet. That's a mouthful. To guide districts in selecting a strong research-based assessment. So what are the elements of a good universal screener, or does the one that's being used include these elements? This worksheet is included in the folder, and although it's really meant to be used by school districts, it can give parents a better understanding of what it is the state is looking for and guiding the districts on. Now let's talk a little bit about the high quality instructional materials. What is meant by high quality instructional materials, or HQIM? They are instructional materials that are aligned with academic standards and that are backed by evidence-based research. They are user-friendly to teachers and culturally aligned and are supportive for diverse students. And why is HQIM important? It is vital for students to receive effective literacy instruction that builds on foundational skills so students can be successful in reading. And this is all students. The instruction needs to be explicit, systematic, and cumulative. Who benefits from it? All students benefit from high quality instructional materials in K through third grade, as well as the educators, because it puts them in a better position to teach effectively, and it is less likely that more students will need interventions when a teacher is using HQIM for their core curriculum. And when is it happening? Now, just like the universal screeners, it started this year, maybe sooner if your districts are doing it before, but definitely this year, and the 25-26 school year. And how will schools obtain guidance that they need? The New Jersey Department Office of Learning Equity and Academic Recovery, or LEAR, published a guide to high quality instructional materials, which is part of the literacy framework and was mandated by the legislation. There, the cover of it is on the screen there. This guide is a comprehensive resource that lays out what school districts need to know about selecting HQIM by sharing a two-part criterion. The focus is to address students' learning needs and align to the scientific research on literacy and learning. And not only is the selection process crucial, it is equally important for educators to be trained in it through ongoing professional development. So this is not a one and done type of situation. This is ongoing professional development that helps the educators. Now, I mentioned the early predictive reading skills. This chart is an example of what those are. These are the key indicators of how well students are likely to develop reading proficiency. As you can see on this table, it shows you what skills are targeted for assessment during universal screening. So each of these skills has been shown to reliably predict future reading success, and they build on each other across grade levels. So starting with letter naming fluency, this refers to how accurately and quickly students can name letters. Next, we have phonemic awareness. This is the ability to hear individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words and work with those sounds. Phonics and decoding. This skill involves recognizing the connection between sounds and letters or letter combinations and using that knowledge to read printed words correctly. And you can see that kindergarten covers those three, and then oral reading fluency starts up in first grade, right? So Oral reading fluency, this is the ability to read aloud accurately, smoothly, and with expression. And then comprehension, this includes retelling what was read and maybe talking about a main idea or recalling something from a passage or completing an activity where a student uses their understanding of context to choose the correct word from different options. So next, we're going to say, what is the goal of the legislation? The goal is to take a proactive approach so that all students can have the opportunity to be skilled, proficient readers, which means they can read the words on the page and make sense of what they are reading. All right, so like all good learners, we're going to test our knowledge, check our knowledge. This is a great way to do it, to go back, review, see what you remember. And we'll start with the first one, first statement. It's a true or false. So you can just kind of think to yourself if this is true or false and see what you remember. New Jersey Literacy Framework is a guide for implementing evidence-based literacy practices in the 26-27 school year, required by a law signed 5 years ago. Is that true or false? It is false. The law was signed actually last year in August 2024 by Governor Murphy, and the requirements for the school districts started this school year. All right. Next, we'll go to Universal Literacy Screener is a tool used to find out whether students are developing the skills they need to know to be successful readers. Is this true or false? This is true. It's a preventative measure for intervening early and not waiting to see if things get worse. Very important aspect of that screener, and that it's given to everyone. HQIM stands for High Quotient Informational Messaging. Is that true or false? False. I don't know what all those words even together would mean. False is, it stands for high quality instructional materials. And finally, we have the early predictive reading skills, which include letter naming fluency and oral fluency, among others. Is that true or false? This is true. The other skills are phonemic awareness, phonics, and comprehension.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth. That was fabulous, as always. Such great information. So we have provided you with a wealth of information today, and now what we want to do is provide you with some strategies that you can take with you to engage your school district and ensure that there's a partnership on early literacy and student success. So the first thing, and a couple of these things that we're going to talk about are about what you can do individually as a parent and caregiver. And so the first recommendation that we wanted to make is, asking questions. So looking at the universal literacy screeners, and on the screen is a sample report that you should have received by now from your school district. If you're listening to this workshop or webinar and you haven't received anything, you should reach out to your child's teacher and ask. But here are some probing questions that you can ask your child's teacher regarding the universal literacy screeners. Questions like, what universal literacy screener does the district use for K through third grade? When throughout the year will screeners be given to students? And how will I know if my child needs intervention? Next is staying informed. So back to what Beth was saying before about the high quality instructional materials. And in addition to universal screeners, districts are required to provide high quality instructional materials, as Beth discussed in greater detail earlier. So here are some questions that you can ask. What instructional materials are being used in my child's classroom? How can I learn more about the curriculum? And where can I find information on what parent resources they have? Next is being prepared. So Perhaps parent-teacher conferences just happened, or maybe they're going to be coming up after the holiday. So some things to think about for parent-teacher conferences, and some questions that you can ask. One is, I see on my child's screening report that she is not meeting all expectations. Can you help me understand what those are and how I can help at home? I've been playing letter games with my child, and I noticed that he struggles with identifying all the letters. How do you work on this with him in school? And aside from the screening, how do you monitor my child's progress in reading?
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the New Jersey Tiered System of Support for Early Reading project here at SPAN. I'm the director of this project, and we're now into our well into our third year. And when you go to the website, and I think it's going to be shared in the chat, there is a great amount of information that we have curated, so that really the idea is that you don't need to go down all the rabbit holes that we went down. I mean, you are welcome to, and there are plenty of links for you to, follow that path. But we tried to make it so organized, so that if you are looking for specific things and information, that it is all right there for you. Some of the examples are links to online resources for literacy development, such as we have National Center for Improving Literacy, Reading Rockets, Reading Universe. We also have activity pages and one-pagers and tip sheets. And all of the things that we've created, we look to put in multiple languages. In this case, we have English, Spanish, Arabic, and French that they're translated in. We also have information and resources on learning challenges, so including information on developmental language disorder, dyslexia, and more information to go deeper into the multi-tiered system of support model, or the response to intervention model. And again, much of the things that we have on our site are meant to be parent friendly, but there are things too that will really build your knowledge, and you can go deeper on these topics. Also, I think of this page as being not just for parents, but really for educators too, because oftentimes I think educators need these resources to be able to connect to families and parents. So I encourage educators to go on and explore as well. And then we have our previous presentations and recordings. So we have all of our presentation with the folders and the PDFs of those presentations, and then we record our presentations. So those are available to go back and check. We have some on parent-teacher conferences. We have some on resources. Again, another curated list that goes a little deeper. We also have this past summer, we have one from the Summer Learning Institute, and I was co-presenting with Amanda Carpena and Deborah Lynham, and they gave some really great information on some of this, what we shared today. So I encourage you to go and check it out.
Thank you for that. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about what you could do in a group setting, as in parent groups. We talked about the individual work that you could do as a parent or caregiver, educator, on this topic. But what can you do as a group? And first and foremost, it's about connecting with other parents and caregivers. Share the information you learned from today so parents can be better informed. And some other things that you can do group-wise as well is at your Board of Education meetings, attending Board of Education meetings. If your Board of Ed has committee meetings, if they're open to the public, maybe a curriculum meeting, attending a curriculum meeting. If they're not open, reading the committee reports and seeing what conversations are being had in your district around early literacy, and the curriculum piece. CPAG, your special education parent advisory group, you should be involved with your CPAG. Bring this information back to your CPAG. At the PTA, these are conversations you could talk about. What does literacy look like within your schools? And engaging your fellow PTA members. School districts have early childhood advisory committees, maybe asking for to attend or be part of the early childhood advisory committee, again, to speak and look at early literacy through the lens of the early childhood advisory committee. And then lastly, there's other types of committees to be involved in within the school district, a culture climate committee, parent involvement committee. These are all opportunities to connect with other parents, know that you're not alone, and to spread the word around the universal screener. That is major legislation that's impacting our schools this year. And Really important to stay informed and involved. And that sort of starts to wrap up today's Lunch and Learn. So we invite you to scan the QR code and take a moment to complete our short survey. Your feedback is essential in helping us to continue to deliver valuable and engaging webinars like this one. So I'll just give you one quick moment, and then I'll talk about the next webinar we'll be hosting. And I hope to see you in December. So December 16th. So in a couple of weeks will be the third part of our Lunch and Learn series on family engagement and literacy. And it is the P will be in partnership. So working together for success and for student success. So last month was a focus on practice with the 5 pillars of early literacy. Today we're talking about policy. Next month we're going to be talking about the partnership and how important it is to build and sustain partnerships between families and school districts around early literacy and student success. So I hope you'll come back. I'll provide some good communication strategies. We'll talk about how to manage and navigate more difficult conversations. And so I really hope to see you next month at our Lunch and Learn. And lastly, our contact information. So you could always feel free to reach out to us and connect with us if you have any questions or concerns or anything that you wanted that further clarification or on anything that we might have talked about today. I do want to thank Beth, our guest presenter, for attending and speaking and presenting today. And again, on our last slide is the QR code with our contact information and how to find us on social media.
Thank you, Stephanie. It was great to be here today with you all.
Yeah, we're so glad. So thank you so much. Okay, and Alexis dropped the link to the survey as well. So if you didn't get it, you could also take a look at it in the chat. And that is it. So I thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. Again, thank you to Beth. Thank you to my colleagues on my team at the Hub, and look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you and have a great day.